When Vector looked in the mirror, he saw the wrinkles on his face. He was 25 years old, but he hadn't slept in 3 months. What if this mixture actually works? He thought. He brought the bottle to his lips and it was 4 a.m. Vector sat alone in the lab, staring at the mirror. He barely recognized himself. There were dark circles under his eyes. His hair was a mess. Small lines had formed on his face, on his forehead, around his eyes, beside his mouth. He was 25, but looked like he was 35. The last 3 months had been hell. Project after project, experiment after experiment. Sleep was practically a luxury now. He was drinking coffee instead of coffee. Sometimes he forgot to eat. This can't go on, he muttered to himself, but what could he do? He couldn't stop himself. Science made him do this. He looked away from the mirror and turned to his desk. In front of him sat a mixture he'd made last night. A purple liquid, faintly glowing. He'd actually made it for something completely different, research on cell renewal, slowing aging in plants. But what if it worked on humans too? It was a crazy thought. Stupid. But Vector was so tired that stupid ideas were starting to make sense. This is where everything changed. In the corner of the desk sat a pot. Inside was a plant on the verge of death. Its leaves had yellowed, wilted, about to fall off. Vector had forgotten to water it 2 weeks ago, and the plant was dying. An idea came to him. What if he tested it first? He grabbed the bottle, approached the plant, dripped a few drops from inside onto the soil, then stepped back and waited. Nothing happened. Of course. What was he expecting anyway? He shrugged, returned to his desk, jotted down a few notes. His eyes were closing, his head spinning. He should go home. Sleep. As he left the lab, he glanced at the plant one last time. It was still the same. Looked dead. When he came back the next morning, he almost fainted, but the really shocking thing was, the plant stood straight. Its leaves were green, bright, like it had just been bought yesterday. The yellowed leaves had come back to life. The ones about to fall were holding tight to the stem. Vector froze. His bag dropped to the floor. "What?" he whispered. He approached the plant, touched one of the leaves. It was real, soft, alive. Its stem was straight, strong, like it had never been sick. His eyes moved to the purple bottle on the desk. That mixture had actually worked. His heart began to race. He started thinking. If it was this effective on a plant, what about other living things? It was a dangerous thought, but Vector couldn't get it out of his head. All day he thought about that mixture, looked at his notes, examined the formula. What was in it? How did it work? Were there side effects? He didn't know, but he wanted to find out. When he went home that evening, he looked in the mirror again. That tired face, those dark circles, those lines. What if they cleared up? What if he felt 10 years younger? Just one sip, he thought. Just to test it. Wait a minute, don't miss this detail. Vector thought for hours that night. Was it dangerous? Absolutely. Was it stupid? Probably. But he couldn't get it out of his head. By morning, he'd made a decision. He'd do it. But with a small dose. Very small. Just one sip. If nothing happened, at least he'd have tried. If something happened, maybe his life would change. The next day, when he got to the lab, the bottle was still on his desk. Purple, bright, mysterious. He looked around. No one was there. The lab was empty. It was the weekend and everyone was on vacation. He picked up the bottle, opened the cap. A faintly sweet smell came from inside, like flowers. Strange. He brought it to his lips, hesitated, thought one last time. Was he really going to do this? He closed his eyes and drank. One sip, Small, controlled. Then he put the bottle down. The taste was unexpected, sweet but also sour, slightly cold. As it went down his throat, it cooled his insides. Now what would happen? Minutes passed. Nothing. He felt normal. Maybe a bit more awake. But that was it. Nonsense, he thought. It worked on the plant, but not on humans. He was disappointed, but also relieved. At least he hadn't hurt himself. He went home, ate dinner, watched TV, then went to bed early, and slept. Deep, long, comfortable sleep. For the first time in 3 months. You haven't seen the real thing yet. When he woke up the next morning, something was different. He felt good. Not just good, amazing, fresh, energetic, like he'd been on vacation for a week. He jumped out of bed, went to the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and froze. The circles under his eyes had lightened. They weren't completely gone, but much less. His skin was brighter. Those small lines on his face were less noticeable. "No way," he whispered. He touched his face. It was real. He wasn't seeing things. He really looked different. His heart began to race. That mixture had worked. It had really worked. He smiled, then laughed, then rushed to get dressed and went to the lab. All day he took notes, examined himself. Every hour he looked in the mirror, took photos, recorded the changes. By the end of the day, he knew for certain that mixture was working. It was renewing cells, reducing fatigue, revitalizing skin. "This is incredible," he said to himself. "This will change the world." But there was a small voice inside. A voice telling him to be careful. Maybe he should do more tests. Maybe he should wait longer. But Vector didn't listen to that voice. But on the 3rd day, something started to change. Vector was in the lab that day too. When he looked in the mirror, he was amazed. The change had become more pronounced. The circles under his eyes were almost completely gone. His skin was smooth as a baby's. Even his hair looked shinier. He examined his hands. His nails were stronger. His skin was softer, like years had gone back. "Incredible," he muttered. "Just one sip." Then a thought came to him. If one sip worked this well, what would happen if he drank a bit more? It was a dangerous thought. He knew it. But he couldn't resist. That evening, at home, he took another sip. This time, a bit more. 2 sips. The taste was more intense this time. Sweeter, more effective. He felt warmth in his body, a pleasant warmth. He slept. And when he woke up the next morning, was the face he saw in the mirror his own face? Because now it wasn't just fatigue marks, age marks had decreased too. Those small lines on his forehead, gone. The wrinkles at the corners of his eyes disappeared. His face was smooth, tight, young. He looked like his 20-year-old self, maybe even younger. Vector was horrified, but also excited. Was this possible? Could he really go back years, 4th day, 5th day, 6th day? Every day he felt a bit younger. Every day when he looked in the mirror, he saw a different face, younger, fresher, more alive. But on the 7th day, on day 7, he realized, it wasn't stopping. When he woke up that morning, something went wrong. When he looked at his hands, he noticed they looked a bit smaller. Just a bit, but noticeably so. He rushed to the mirror, looked at his face, young, very young. Not 20, maybe 18, maybe even younger. Panic began. This was too much. It was happening too fast. It has to stop, he thought. I shouldn't drink anymore. That day, he stayed away from the mixture. Didn't drink. Just waited. But the change didn't stop. The result was very, very different from expected. On the 8th day, his hands got even smaller. His arms were thinner. When he looked in the mirror, the face he saw looked like his 16-year-old self. "No, no, no!" he shouted. "Stop! Please stop!" But it wasn't stopping. His body kept changing, kept getting younger. On the 9th day, his clothes started feeling loose. His shoes were too big, like he was wearing a child's clothes. Vector was panicking. What should he do? Who should he call? He couldn't tell anyone. No one would believe him. Or worse, they'd try to use him like a lab rat. On the 10th day, when he looked in the mirror, he cried, because the face he saw was his 14-year-old self, maybe 13. When he woke up that morning, his hands were as small as someone else's. Vector was scared now, really scared. If this continued, what would happen? Would he become a child? A baby? Or would he go even further back? He went to the lab. With trembling hands, he opened his notes, looked at the formula. What was in it? How could he stop this? He researched for hours, turned pages, examined books, finally found something, an opposing substance, something that could slow the effect, maybe stop it. But it would take time to make, and he had very little time. That's when Vector realized he'd made a mistake, because one of the things needed to make that opposing substance was the plant in the pot, that renewed plant. But Vector had thrown it away a few days ago. He'd thought it wasn't needed anymore. "Idiot!" he shouted at himself. "How could I be this stupid?" But he didn't give up. He had to find another way. There had to be a way. On the 11th day, he looked like a child, maybe 12 years old. Even his voice had changed, thinner, higher. He was afraid to look in the mirror now. Every glance, he saw someone else. That night, he stayed in the lab, worked all night, tried formula after formula, made mixture after mixture. And by morning, he found it. A small, green liquid. It smelled disgusting, but might work. He brought it to his lips, hesitated. What if something worse happened? What if he never came back? But he had no choice. He drank, all of it, down to the last drop. The taste was terrible. His stomach turned, but he swallowed, then waited. What you're seeing now is nothing. An hour later, he felt something. A weight in his body, unpleasant but strong. He looked in the mirror. His face was changing, slowly but changing. The aging had stopped. He wasn't shrinking anymore, but he hadn't started aging either. He was stuck there at that point, in a 12-year-old body with a 25-year-old brain. Vector collapsed to the floor, cried. But this time they were tears of joy. It had stopped. He wasn't going further. The following days, he slowly started coming back, very slowly, a bit each day. His hands grew, his height increased, his face matured. A month later, when he looked in the mirror, he looked like his 18-year-old self. 2 months later, 20. 3 months later. You won't believe this, but 3 months later, he'd returned to exactly his 23-year-old self. 2 years younger, but stable. Stopped. Under control. No circles under his eyes, no lines on his face. His skin was bright, his hair full. He felt good, but most importantly, he'd learned a lesson. He sat at his desk, opened his notebook, and wrote, "Being too ambitious about some things can make you lose everything out. But not giving up and fixing your mistake can save you. Note, I will never experiment on myself again. Maybe." He crossed out that maybe, then smiled. He put the purple bottle on the shelf, stuck a label on it. Don't use. Seriously. But next to that bottle, he placed another. The green one, the antidote, just in case. But one more thing happened. A few weeks later, someone knocked on Vector's door. When he opened it, it was an old friend. He was surprised to see him. How do you look so young?" he asked. Vector smiled. "I go to bed early and wake up early," he said, "and I eat lots of vegetables." Did his friend believe him? Number. But he didn't keep asking. Vector closed the door and looked in the mirror. He was 23. He'd gained 2 years, but he'd almost lost everything. Was it worth it? He asked himself. The answer was complicated. No, because it had been too risky. But yes, because now he knew something, where the limits were. And wasn't that what science was all about? Testing limits, making mistakes, learning, and not making the same mistake again. He returned to the lab. He'd start a new experiment, but this time it would be different. This time he'd only work on plants, at least for a while. 3 months later, Vector was at a conference. He went on stage, showed his slides, talked about cell renewal and aging. The audience was fascinated. They asked questions. Vector answered, but he didn't tell anyone the real secret. After the conference, someone came up to him, an elderly scientist. His hair was white, his face wrinkled. "Young man," he said, "your theory is very interesting. But tell me, have you ever tested this on yourself?" Vector stopped, smiled. "Some experiments," he said, "are meant to be imagined, not actually done." The old man nodded. "Wise," he said, "because some secrets should remain secrets." Vector looked at him. He saw something in the man's eyes. Wisdom, as if he too had once experienced something similar. But he didn't ask. Some things were better not to know. As he left the conference hall, he looked at his phone. A message from the lab. "New plant experiment successful. Let's see the test results tomorrow." He smiled. Science continued, but this time more carefully, more patiently, more wisely. And maybe, just maybe, one day he'd share that secret with the world. But first, he needed to perfect it. Because Vector now knew the best discovery is one made without rushing. The purple bottle was still in the lab, locked on the shelf, next to the antidote. Both would wait. Maybe for years, maybe forever. But Vector was ready. Whenever needed, he was ready. Because some stories are lived only once, but their lessons last forever.